Hi, it's Mark from Remarkable Speaking. I'm here with Wil Seto of Insync Physio in Vancouver, one of the top physiotherapy clinics in Vancouver and one of the best physios in Vancouver. And we're talking about arthritis and how physiotherapy might be able to help you. How you doing, Wil?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Mark.
So I thought that, arthritis was just you take pills, they try and make the pain go away, and you live with it. Am I wrong?
Well, let's even break it down a little bit more. So let's talk about like one specific type of arthritis that we actually deal with a lot with our physio group at the clinics, and that's called osteoarthritis. So there's all these other different types of arthritis, which like rheumatoid arthritis, and then all these other arthritises that are basically kind of more systemic in origin. And you take pills for that as well. And sometimes the osteoarthritis, and I'll explain to you what that is in a second. But like with osteoarthritis, sometimes the doctor will actually also prescribe Tylenol as a pain reliever. And so, what osteoarthritis, in very simple terms, is just basically a degeneration of your joint based on wear and tear. So there's not a systemic issue going on in terms of like the same type of rheumatoid arthritis. So with rheumatoid, it usually affects multiple joints and it's not like isolated to one area because of wear and tear. Now, if you've had like an injury per se, so I'll give you a specific example. Like let's say an individual, an athlete, tears their ACL and their meniscus, and they have to get that meniscus, that little cushiony part in the knee removed and the ACL repaired. Now they lack more of that cushion. Now, it is true that you will have a higher chance of developing osteoarthritis because it's the wear and tear of the joint. So this is where, the question of how does physio help with this type of arthritis? It's a very good question. And ultimately, you want to look at the joint being like, so in the joint, you have what's called synovial fluid. Synovial fluid is basically like the oil for your joints. And so you essentially want to keep the joints moving, and that's going to keep the joint healthy. And what you also want to do is you want to keep all the muscles around that joint functioning and healthy too, which will keep the joint moving in equilibrium. Because the other thing you don't want to do is that you don't want to have excessive amounts of force pulling on that joint because there's imbalances in those muscles. So, for example, going back to the ACL example, let's say I get super extremely tight in one of my quad muscles, my rectus femoris, because like I compensate post injury or whatever. And so now I'm going to get a lot more increased excessive forces on my kneecap, which is called the patella, and it's going to come up, causing a condition called patella alta. So what happens is then you're going to get that rubbing, and you're more prone to a degenerative effect in your kneecap. So we want to balance things out. We don't want to have things in balance. And so that's important too. Now, going back to what I said about that synovial fluid, the more we keep the body moving, the more that we pump the fluid in and out. So that fluid carries nutrients to the joint because usually in the joint, you don't really have a rich blood supply. So then you need to rely on that synovial fluid. You need to have a pumping mechanism. So merely getting the joint moving pumps out that old synovial fluid and then pumps in fresh nutrients for that joint, keeping it healthy. So that's how physiotherapy can help. Prescriptive exercises, looking at what exactly is tight, what exactly is weak to support a more optimal alignment, either of the joint, so in your knee, for example, if you're like a runner and you're trying to get back to running post injury, maybe your hip muscle called your gluteus medius is weak and it's causing this alignment issue when you're running in your knee. So we address that, then that's going to make things move more smoothly in the knee, and you're not going to get an abnormal biomechanics happening in the knee. And so that's the really important thing is we're also retraining your neuromuscular system. So neural being the nerve, muscle, skeletal system. So getting that all working together properly, helping you develop a more optimal way of moving those muscles around that joint for better joint health.
So, bottom line, if you've got some arthritis showing up, pain, it needs to be diagnosed by a doctor first, correct?
Yes and no. We get a lot of people that come in that haven't been seen by a doctor, and we're like, yeah, that looks like osteoarthritis. And you can confirm it with a scan, but if it's really kind of borderline, you're not really sure, then we send you to the doctor for more additional tests, maybe rule out other types of arthritis. So that's possible too.
And you work in conjunction with doctors all the time,
Absolutely. Our whole team does, yes.
referring back and forth. So if you've got some joint pain and you want expert analysis and you want to see if it can get better, or you've been diagnosed with osteoarthritis and you want to not have it get worse, because if you don't do anything, it's going to get worse. But if you start moving in a proper way, you're going to get that synovial fluid in there. You're going to have a longer expectation of good movement in your joints and a lot less problem when you're 90 years old, like my dad, and can't really move all that well. And so you want to get into Insync Physio. Where to book? insyncphysio.com, or you can give them a call. The Vancouver office is 604-566-9716. And they also have an office in North Burnaby. Thanks, Wil.
Thanks, Mark. And remember, motion is lotion.